And before we get into all your questions, we got about 25 of them, Wolfpack. Love to see it. Awesome. Keep them racking up. Would love to answer as many as you guys have. Of course, that thumbs up does help us continue to grow. Would be so greatly appreciated. And of course, if you haven't subbed, we would want to get to that 2K goal. We're so close. It would mean the world if you're enjoying this content, you like what you're hearing. But the last thing I want to cover here, now that we are at week 14, as I was alluding to, if you're already in the playoffs and you just need some upside on your bench, you don't need that wide receiver 6 anymore, and you want to stash them, this is where cuffing season comes in. You got to cozy up on to those backup running backs that could explode, ignite down your stretch run. So I'm going to go through 8 that are widely available. Of course, you don't need me to tell you Madison and A.J. Dillon and Tony Pollard, and now Sony Michel, who we've been raving about, my number 2 pickup last week. That really panned out. Pretty pumped about that. Darrell Williams. All those guys are owned in 65% or more leagues. Like, we're not going to go through that. Just wanted to, if any of those guys are out there, of course, before any name I've talked about, go get them, right? I'm going to look at guys that are out there in all but 80 out there in 80% more of leagues. Number 1, Khalil Herbert. We saw him as a starter, went for over 100 in both of his first games to start, including against that brutal Bucs defense, was a beast. It just looked like a monster in their playoff schedule. I think David Montgomery's going to bring titles this year, just like he did last year. But should he go down again, then it's going to be Khalil Herbert delivering those titles. So between the production we already saw, the talent is very real. Impressed much more as a receiver than I expected. I think Khalil Herbert would step right into a 3-down role if something happens to David Montgomery, and he has the schedule to destroy. So he's a guy I'm going to be putting on the back end of all of my benches. My number 1 handcuff, but not far behind him is Samaje Perine, 7%. There's a time we thought this might be a committee between him and Joe Mixon, the fantasy community that we did, given how well he looked. He does look explosive. He's a pass catcher. He would be also, what I look for in these handcuffs is 3-down upside. I don't want a guy that's going to walk into a committee and be gross like the Chargers, right? A good explosive offense. But if Eckler goes down, I don't think Justin Jackson's a 3-down back. So he's not on this list. He'd be like 10 or 11. But I have 8 names that you could go look for before. I do think Perine would take over as close to an every down back. Chris Evans might mix in a little bit, but Perine has looked solid in his limited work. Dating back to last year when he's seen 13-plus touches, he's been a top 15 guy. So I could see that again for Samaje Perine here down your stretch runs. Ronald Jones, number 3, 24% rostered. We've seen how good playoff Lenny is. I do think this would be a little bit more of a committee. Lenny leads the NFL in running back receptions right now. Like, that's not going to happen with Ronald Jones. He's not a good receiver. It would be a Gio Bernard Ronald Jones show. But whenever Ronald Jones gets carries, I still think he, as good as Lenny's been in fantasy, I think Ronald Jones is a more talented, pure runner. And so if that ends up happening where this guy's getting 12 to 15 carries a game in this offense, he'd be a top 20 running back play each and every week. So certainly like Ronald Jones. Devontae Booker's number 4 on my handcuff list. We already saw it. He was the every down horse, 80% plus snaps in almost all of those games. Certainly involved as a wide receiver, like a 15 to 20% target share across all those games. That's what you're looking for your handcuff upside. It's a gross offense, but volume is volume is volume. And Devontae Booker at 27% rostered would deserve a ton of looks. Dearness Johnson, we've already seen light the fantasy world on fire in his 2 starts. Now, Kareem Hunt is back, so that's why he's not number 1 on this list. He would be. He's only 18% rostered. Kareem Hunt would be the de facto number 1, but I do think after how great Dearness played, I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of slid him into the Nick Chubb role and gave him 15-plus carries and let Hunt just kind of stay in his Hunt-type role. So I think Dearness definitely should be on rosters here going down your stretch run. We talked about Hasty / Wilson. The playoff schedule is a gold mine here for the 49ers. So if Eli Mitchell's concussion symptoms linger, some of those guys, I think having a backup in this backfield is certainly worthwhile. Hasty I'd go to first as the potential starter this week. And then if he thrives, could be the clear number 1. Wilson did nothing in his opportunities. And the last 2 names I want to hit. Number 7 is Peyton Barber, 0% rostered, but had 1 start this year, went over 100 yards, had about 80 yards above after contact, was churning. Our boy, the truth, loves him. He had touchdowns in the game. So if anything happens, we already know Drake's done. So if something, God forbid, happens to Jacobs, there's nobody else to contend with. So he can catch the ball. He can kind of do it all gross, but he can do it all. So that would be a volume machine, as would be Peyton Barber, and an offense that's very competent and would generate plenty of scoring opportunities for the guy. And then last but not least is Carlos Hyde. If James Robinson's heel lingers, the fumbling issues pop up. We saw Hyde score. He was an 85% snap guy the last time Robinson missed time. He's just a plotter that will fall into the end zone and be okay. They have one of the top 3 matchups for running backs down the stretch. I don't like Hyde. I don't think he's a good talent, but If Robinson continues to fumble his opportunities away, and he's not a fumbler, I don't know why this is happening. He has, I think, 2 career fumbles so far. But if it happens again or he gets hurt, we could see Hyde emerge down the stretch. So those are my top 8 running back handcuffs. Again, Herbert, Perine, Ronald Jones, Booker, D'Ernest, Hasty, or Wilson, Barber, Carlos Hyde are the guys I would look at here to add to my bench if you got some trash like Rashad Bateman at this point. Not a trash player, but a trash role right now. Get rid of those guys, stash up some of this upside, because if something happens to Montgomery or any of the stars ahead of them, all of those guys could be weekly top 15 options for your playoff stash runs. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.